Ladies and gentlemen, seekers of light and secret knowledge wherever you may be, you are listening to Points of Light Radio, the podcast dedicated to taking you past the apron and behind the closed doors of lodges everywhere. And here is your host, Stan Miller.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, adnastana. It's wonderful to be back with you in a brand new year and continuing this journey of light and knowledge that we started here on Points of Light Radio. Hasn't this journey been wonderful? Again, I want to apologize. Some of the videos we put out here recently have had some technical difficulties to them. Okay? Please be patient. I'm working my way through those, but let's move forward here. In today's segment of Points of Light Radio, we will continue the historical journey that we started taking here on Points of Light Radio in 2024 by investigating another defunct fraternal order, and that order is called the Tribe of Ben-Hur. Believe it or not, there was a fraternal organization called the Tribe of Ben-Hur, and it was based, of course, on the novel Ben-Hur, A Tale of the Christ by Lew Wallace. Have you ever read the novel there? I personally have not, and I understand there was a movie based on the novel, was there not? There again, I never read the book, never saw the movie, so if I'm missing out on that, just please let me know. But that's the depth of my knowledge on Ben-Hur itself. Now, I gained some historical knowledge, of course, on the fraternal organization that was started as a result of the book. So, let's move forward and investigate, shall we? But as you've heard me ask you before, are you still thirsty for knowledge? Are you still searching for the light? Then you just trim your lamp and follow me. So, in the early 1890s, two gentlemen from Crawfordsville, Indiana, named D.W. Gerard and F.L. Snyder, formulated the idea of starting a fraternal order based on the novel Ben-Hur and chose the name the Knights of Ben-Hur. In November of 1893, they consulted with the book's author, Lew Wallace, and asked for his consent to form the order. Wallace consented on the condition that this new order not be called the Knights of Ben-Hur, due to the fact that there were only tribes during the period he'd written that book on. Wallace then received permission from his publishers for the formation of the order. I love how they kind of, they were very courteous back then, weren't they? Kind of involving, they didn't want to, kind of do something without consulting the author. Things like that was very courteous, if you ask me. Now, after discussions with Wallace, Gerard and Snyder chose the Tribe of Ben-Hur as the name for this new order. On January 9th, 1894, the order was incorporated in the state of Indiana and held its first meeting. It was actually the meeting of the Supreme Tribe on January 16th of that year. Former Governor Ira Joy Chase, seen here, was elected the order's very first Supreme Chief. I love that. Politicians getting involved in these things already, right? You can see that. The popularity of the novel Ben-Hur helped spread the growth of the order, and the Tribe of Ben-Hur gained members rather quickly. By January 1st, 1895, the Tribe of Ben-Hur had 1,701 members. By January 1st of 1896, it had 5,050 members. By January 1st of 1897, the Tribe of Ben-Hur had 12,322 members, 12,000 of whom had joined in December of 1896 alone. That is, the growth of this organization was incredible. In 1910, the Tribe of Ben-Hur had 106,216 members. I mean, the growth of this was amazing. Now, as you heard me mention earlier, the Tribe of Ben-Hur spread quickly in its earlier years. And by 1897, it had courts, as they were called them, or lodges, in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, Michigan, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, and Nebraska, Colorado, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, California, Oregon, and Washington State, pretty much nationwide. Now, in the 1920s, put it this way, its growth was so explosive, by the 1920s, it had spread to over 20 states. And it's just, I mean, when you look at this, you see how this organization, like, its courts just spread so fast. Now, there's no evidence that it ever made it up as far as, shall we say, Canada or anywhere else, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did. Now, as I said, they're local units or lodges. They called them courts. And the first court was chartered on March 1st, 1894, and it was called the Seminoids Court Number 1 in Crawfordsville, Indiana. Now, the organization's rituals were based on the novel of Ben-Hur and were said to be moral, religious, and patriotic. Now, that's interesting why they would choose those themes. Why do you think that was? Now, there were degree ceremonies and an oath of secrecy. However, the order was not rigid about its secrecy oath. Now, you've heard me talk about this before, so let's put it this way. I will get back to that point, to put it that way. And while we're on the topic of degrees, a new temple degree was created in 1920 and could only be awarded by the Supreme Tribe. Sounds like almost like Roll of Honor with the RAOB, right? Sounds like something like that. Now, the tribe operated a graded assessment program whereby people who joined the order between the ages of 18 and 23 were insured for a maximum of $3,000, and people who joined the order between ages of 54 and 65 were insured for a maximum of $500. Okay, sounded like there was some ageism involved there, don't you? Like, you know, the benefits were paid out on a dollar a month dues, and members could also opt for 50 cents per half month certificate with corresponding declines in benefits, or 1.5 or double certificates with similar increases. It sounded like it was a fairly complicated insurance structure they were running there. Now, the order would never pay more than $3,000 for any given life, nor more than a whole certificate on the life of a woman. So it sounds like there was, right, there was some sexism and ageism involved here. You see, and they did say, though, that men and women were supposed to be admitted to membership upon terms of absolute equality, but I'm not seeing that here. There was definitely some, right, I don't know, doesn't sound like everybody was equal. Now, the Tribe of Ben-Hur also operated a scholarship fund, and by 1920, the fund paid out scholarships of $500 per year of college education. The society also operated a monthly allowance program for eligible orphans from birth to 18. And by 1910, the Tribe of Ben-Hur's membership peaked at 1,309 courts, and after that, their numbers began to dwindle, right? By 1979, the Tribe of Ben-Hur was down to 217 courts and totaled 31,000 members, right? The order was down to 15,000 members by 1990. Its headquarters remained in Crawfordsville, Indiana throughout the 70s. And in 1979, it was licensed to sell insurance in only 16 states and the District of Columbia. So whatever became of the Tribe of Ben-Hur, well, Ben-Hur Life Association became a commercial company called USA Life Insurance in 1988. Essentially, like many of the defunct fraternal orders we've discussed here on Points of Light Radio, this is another organization that kind of morphed into more of much more like the Woodmen of the world, put it that way. It morphed into an insurance company, right? So, what are some things that we gathered? Well, much like the Knights of Pythias, which started after Justice Rathbone watched a play about Damon and Pythias, that Greek play. See, you see that you can start a fraternal order based around almost anything, right? Many of these fraternal orders got their ritual when members were going and watching plays. Now, here you have an example of, they've read about this in a book. And put it this way, many of the degrees and rituals within Freemasonry and other orders are based around biblical stories. So you can form a fraternal organization around almost anything. People had such vivid imaginations back then. As I always said, how come we don't have that sort of imagination today, right? What are we doing here, right? Now, I promised you I'd get back to the life insurance part of it. Well, after reading through the insurance policy, which seemed very complicated, I might add, unlike a lot of the ones, I only kind of encapsulated on it because their insurance policy was very complicated. And as far as I'm concerned, there was some ageism and sexism thrown in there. I don't know, right? But here's all that aside, right? I can understand why some of these organizations dropped their insurance schemes as soon as the government formed a social safety net, because it was like I said, it was complicated and it was expensive, right? Right now, here's the part I really want to get to. Okay, there were degrees. Remember what I said? There were degrees. And there were ceremonies and an oath of secrecy. However, the Tribe of Ben-Hur was not rigid about its secrecy oath, and from everything I gathered, didn't even put a whole lot of emphasis on their degrees, right? I mean, how do you do esoteric or degree work and not require absolute secrecy? Right? What's the point of the degrees without secrecy? Is it just me? Am I reading too much into this? Right? Let's talk about that, right? I don't understand how you could have that. Right? And, and still, am I really reading too much into the benefits? It seems like every time these defunct orders that we've studied here mixed benefits with esoteric work, they seem to put a lower priority on their ritual and secret work, right? And it just seems to fail every time. And some of them had very good degrees, based on what you saw me, what you heard me say here earlier. Their degrees were moral, religious, and patriotic. So I can imagine there was some, their degrees were probably quite good, as you've often heard me say about the idea of learning in your degree work. You do need to do that. Sounds like they were good degrees that way, but not being secretive. I don't know, right? But I mean, like I said, it just seems like anytime they mix those two, at the end of the day, they put more emphasis on insurance, and that's too bad. I think, like I said, it fails. It just seems to, based on everything we studied, it seems to fail every time, right? But that's all I have time for here. But before I go, first of all, I want to draw your attention to the PayPal link in the detail section of this particular segment. Please go there, make a voluntary donation, and we will use that donation to move the podcast forward. I also want to remind you that this podcast is available on both YouTube and Spreaker. Please share, like, and subscribe when viewing Points of Light Radio on YouTube. I also welcome your comments and input. You can follow Points of Light Radio on my Facebook page at facebook.com/Points of Light Radio. You can see the link to my Twitter handle as well as my Spotify channel and my Points of Light Radio store. Brothers and sisters, it's been a pleasure bringing you this segment. And until we meet again, just step into the light.